Hello and welcome to a special dialogue on TVR World with me, Audrey Otoyo. Today we are extremely glad and honored to be joined with Mr. Rahmat Kaimuddin, who is the Coordinating Deputy Minister for Infrastructure and Transportation at the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs and Investments and one of the Indonesian top delegates at COP28. Hello, Mr. Rahmat. How are you
Hello,
doing? Thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure is mine.
It's really great to discuss with you today, especially about the COP28 that just had some especially historical agreements on financing in order to fast track a green energy transition. So how was your time at COP28, if you can just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so thank you. I spent about a week in COP, initially with part of the president delegation, and then of course after president left UAE, we stayed for a few days for a few of the panels. And at that time during COP, my role is to explain a few of the initiatives that we have done in Indonesia. So maybe three major topics. One is on energy transition. Second thing is on the electric vehicle. And the third one is on the air quality. So those are the kind of topics that I cover when I was in COP.
And are those topics that are in particularly covered by the role of the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs and Investment?
Yeah, it's part of these jobs that was given because our ministry handle energy, environment, infrastructure, transport. So those are within the portfolio of our ministry.
And how would you say were the responses? I heard that there was an Indonesia pavilion at COP28, especially towards conversations about green energy transition with Indonesia.
Yeah, I think like every countries who participate will get a pavilion, and I would say Indonesian pavilion. What I heard from some of the guests, apparently is one of the nicer ones. It's actually the best pavilion, they say, because I think for several reasons. I think a few things is about we have a lot of events, even from morning until late evening. We have many discussions across multiple segments at COP, and of course the way we decorate the pavilion, and people actually dress up using Indonesian traditional dresses, and we also provide local foods, not local food, Indonesian food. So I think it's a whole cultural experience to visit Indonesian pavilion. But most importantly, I think there are a few topics that we discuss in the Indonesian pavilion that get a lot of recognition and participation from the international communities. One that we organize, our ministry organize specifically, for example, is the energy transition, especially the Just Energy Transition Partnership. So at that time, we set up a panel between Indonesian government and then the international partner groups, which is G7, Denmark, and Norway, represented by U.S. government and Japanese government. We also invite private sector in the panel. Basically, some of the commercial banks, international banks. At the time, Pak Doni from Standard Chartered is one of the panelists. And it's moderated by Mark Carney, who is a very top person on climate financing. He used to be the central bank head for UK and Canada, as well as right now the chairman for Glasgow for GFANZ, Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. So this is all very prominent people coming in, and we discuss about Indonesia energy transition.
And would you say that there has been extensive progress, Pak Rahmat, especially from the inception of the JETP, Just Energy Transition, from the G20 summit in Bali?
Yeah, that is, I think the JETP announcement in G20 is a milestone for Indonesia. I think initially Indonesia has always been committed for basically net zero. We ratified the Paris Agreement. We set our net zero 2060 or earlier, and we want to be very serious about how we can look at the energy transition in general. And of course, we need support. We mentioned it that we can do it faster with international support, and in order to do energy transition, there are multiple components that is required, and most importantly, you need technology and you need financing, right? So I think Indonesian JETP is one of the first of its kind, whereby we invited international community to be part of the process. So what we do is when we set up the working groups, we invited international organizations like World Bank, International Energy Agency, UNDP, and Asian Development Bank to lead some of these working groups. Then we invite the country partners and NGOs to be part of that as well. And as a result, I think we come up with clearer plans on how we can do energy transition, and also identify what are the requirements, the kind of the technology, the policy, as well as the financing.
And how would you say, I heard that there are several types of financing, especially from JETP. Does it come, for example, in a form of grants, or what other types of form does it come in?
Yeah, I think JETP commitment is basically, right now, maybe you can divide it into three components. One, grants. Second thing is concessional financing, which is basically lower than market, and of course commercial financing, which is typical market market rate financing. When we look at energy transition, like maybe in the Indonesian case, we try to explain that in order for us to do energy transition, there are several things that we need to do. For example, we need to build transmission. So that is very fundamental for energy transition, because unlike building fossil power plants, if you build fossil power plants, you can build it closer to the demand, right? You bring the energy, the fuel nearer, and then you don't need that much transmission, less transmission needed. But the moment you build renewables, then the power source, the energy source has to be in that place, right? Let's say the hydro is where the water is, and let's say the geothermal must be where the resource is, and you need to bring the power from the source to where the demand is. So you need different type of infrastructure or transmission, and this is a long-term project. And building transmission doesn't generate economic benefits on its own, right? So they need financing that is more concessional. The other thing that we need to build is also a lot more renewables, right? And the solar, the wind, hydro, geothermal, what have you. This one is more, it's an value creating, economic activity is created if you build those power plants, because you create electrons that people want. That one is probably okay to use more like market rate, right? But in Indonesia, what is probably quite specific for developing country, Indonesia have young coal fleet, right? Basically we just built our power plant maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 18 years ago. Some of them are still, quite a lot of them are still in useful economic life. So if you want to fully transition, for example, we need to turn them off and or do early retirement, if you will. And if you do early retirement, we need to find financing to offset the costs.
Yes.
And that will require very deeply concessional and or grant financing. And today, I think after the JETP plan was created, we roughly know how much is required for Indonesia, maybe close to 100 billion. And basically on the current commitment, we know that we need more. We need more commitment. We need more funding. We need more capital, and more importantly, we also need more grants and concessional financing. This is something that we kind of acknowledge once we finish the plan.
And how long do you think, Pak Rahmat, that there will be full implementation of this JETP program, especially in Indonesia?
Yeah, I think the JETP program itself is part of the total big picture of Indonesian energy transition, of course, because it's a partnership with G7 and Denmark and Norway, right? And of course, Indonesia will need to create more partnership like this to gain all the full international support. But the next step after the JETP plan is that we will need to update our long-term electricity generation plan, or RUPTL we call it in Indonesia. And once it's done, I think then it become regular business process of Indonesian PLN, for example. They will issue tender, and then people can apply for the tender, and people can look for financing from the partners that has committed to help Indonesian energy transition. The people from the IPG countries as well as from the GFANZ members. Of course, there are other partners or parties outside of those people.
So that is what we hope in the future.
We should start once the RUPTL is out, then we can start doing.
Yes. Thank you so much, Pak Rahmat, and we will have a more in-depth conversation, especially about the results of COP28 with Pak Rahmat Kaimuddin, who is the Coordinating Deputy Minister for Infrastructure and Transportation at the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs and Investment, right after a short break. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to Special Dialogue on TVR World with me, Audrey Toyo, still in conversation with Mr. Rahmat Kaimuddin, who is the Coordinating Deputy Minister for Infrastructure and Transportation at the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs and Investment, still talking about the COP28. Pak Rahmat, thank you again for joining us in this beautiful day to discuss about some of the deliverables of COP28. So, I would really love to touch upon a topic that I believe have been at the forefront of a lot of governments' agendas, especially in Indonesia, which is the EV or electric vehicle ecosystem. So we could see even from the ASEAN summit in Labuan Bajo this year, one of the official cars is electric, which it might come as a surprise for some people. However, that truly does show that we are slowly but surely transitioning into this ecosystem. Can you please share more about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, of course, when we want to do energy transition, we have to do many things. I think there's a lot of work to be done and discussed about power generation, right? We spoke about power generation, how can we generate electricity from renewables. But we have to recognize that the way we use fossil is not only from electricity generation, but it's also for other activities. For example, in mobility or transportation. Indonesia have about 150 million vehicles currently in operation, about 130 million motorbike and 20 million cars. And those vehicles, almost all of them, are combustion engine, basically using fossil fuel to power it. So this is a very important thing if you want to do energy transition. One of the key is we have to reduce or eliminate our dependence with fossil. And one of the existing technology that is available today that is relatively quite mature is electric vehicle. If you look at the total sales of cars every year in the world, I think EV has been growing very very fast, and maybe today about I think last year was 14, maybe this year about 18 to 20%.
Wow.
And on some of the largest markets like China, like EU, and also the US, it has passed the tipping point. What people say the tipping point is between 5 to 10%.
Wow.
Once new sales is above 5 to 10%, it's actually growing up.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In China, for example, I just got back from China. It's right now maybe about 1 out of 3 new sales of cars is new energy, so electric vehicle.
Wow.
So it's very very fast, and they only probably passed that 5-10% barrier only a few years ago. So the technology is available, and I guess now the task is for Indonesian government is to bring the ecosystem here. And it actually create a lot of benefits, right? For energy transition itself, for the environment, both for the greenhouse gases as well as for air quality. That is important. And also, we in Indonesia are not a net exporter country for oil anymore, right? We are an importing country for oil. So this is also will increase our energy dependence. While electricity typically we generate domestically.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of discussions also about fuel subsidy, which is quite large and take a lot of our fiscal space. So I think once if we shift this to EV, I think this will help Indonesia to reduce our dependence to fossil fuel. So I think us we are in the government feel very strongly about this, and we have done quite a lot of work to basically support this ecosystem.
And what do you believe, Pak Rahmat, can make us even more ready to welcome this ecosystem? Because now we can see that other countries have been exponentially working on this ecosystem, making sure that they are also at the forefront, they're most advanced in it. What do you believe are some steps that we can take, and especially from the government itself, in order to ready us for this transition?
Yeah. One good thing that we already have, inherently, Indonesia is a very attractive market for automotive. I mentioned about the number of vehicles that is in Indonesia. So roughly every year we sell about 1 million plus cars, and it's growing, and maybe about 5 to 7 million of motorbike every year. So automotive sector is quite big in Indonesia. Obviously today it's mostly dominated by combustion engine, right? The conventional one. But it's also give attraction to the EV players because they see Indonesia to be an attractive market. So that is in itself, that is inherent. So what we can do in the government is to show the support that this is the directions that we want to go. And if you think about the people, or like how people can adopt electric vehicle, maybe there's a few things that we need to think about. Right? One, that should be enough options, like good products that people can buy, right? If let's say not enough products, not enough choice, or not reliable, maybe people don't want to convert. Right? Second thing is that this products has to be affordable for the people, and the third one, you have to have the supporting ecosystem, the charging and the battery and whatnot. Right? So I think that is what we are trying to do, and we have to start from the market first, from the demand side, and that's why this year we have provided government support for people who purchase electric vehicle. For example, for motorbike, one person age of 17 or older, as long as you're Indonesian, you can buy EV one, and we provide like 7 million discount from the government,
Wow.
right, or $450, and that will hopefully bring down the cost to similar to combustion engine, or at least close to it. So now when someone want to buy new motorbike, they can look into it. I say, hey, instead of buying combustion engine, maybe I can choose EV. Because once you choose EV, actually, later on, maybe you'll feel the benefit that your cost will be lower because the fuel cost is actually more expensive than electricity cost, even if you travel with the same distance. And then we also provide support for the ones that has existing motorbikes. So we also provide 7 million rupiah for conversion, and I think there's a discussion whether we can improve the type of incentive that we give. So people who currently have a motorbike but they want to convert, instead of buying new, they can go to a workshop that is already approved by the government. They can change the engine, you know, they can add batteries and whatnot, and that will be then they become EV. Also for cars, we currently provide about 10% price reduction by way of we call it government paid VAT. So our value added taxes is 11%, but now government support or paid 10% of that. So they only
10% of that.
So they only need to pay
Wow.
one, right? So this is basically 10% discount for the car. Of course, we only support currently the cars that is manufactured in Indonesia with local content of 40%, because we also want to support our domestic industry. And only this month, we also have created a new regulation, Presidential Decree number 79/2023, which allow manufacturers who commit to build factories or build manufacturing capacity in Indonesia to import cars first while they are building their factories or capacity. They can import until end of 2025. And the cars that they import will also get a waiver for custom and luxury tax. So this is quite significant saving for the customer. The only catch is they have to commit to build production capacity, and they have to produce the same amount of what they import. So let's say until 2025 they import, let's say 10,000.
Yeah.
They have to produce 10,000 also until 2027. So we hope that while giving them time to build the market, to test which kind of product is suitable, and while building their factory, they don't lose time. They can build their business in between, and of course, once this period is over, we have a production in Indonesia. So that is something that we have issued, and one of my targets actually is to communicate this, and we've got quite a positive response from a few of the manufacturers, and they are readying up their plan to enter and build manufacturing capacity in Indonesia.
So we should be looking forward to that really soon.
Yes, you will see more options in Indonesia, and in different price ranges.
Indeed. And what is your projection, Pak Rahmat? Do you think this will hopefully happen in the near future, in the 2050, 2016, which we can fully have that ecosystem?
Yeah, I think if you want to do net zero, then this has to happen. So we do have our internal target. I think Mr. President has already said that they want to have 600,000 per year EV manufacturing capacity. And also the government has stated that we want to have about 10% of the population, not of new sales, but population by 2030. Or it means about 2 million cars and 13 million motorbikes by 2030. So that is very basically that's a big target.
Yes.
So we need all the products to come in. At the same time, let's say if we want to target So, we look at other countries, right? Other countries have EU, for example, they want net zero by 2050. What they do is by 2035, they say no more new sales of combustion engine or emissive vehicles, right? Because they probably take about 15 years
To adapt.
for this new car that they buy to be fully depreciated, right? So that is something maybe if you want to make sure, we need to set when do we want to have fully non-emissive vehicle ecosystem. Then we need to maybe spend about 15 to 20 years looking backwards, right? On the other side, we see Thailand. Thailand market is not too far from Indonesia. We are about 1 million sales per year. They're, I think, about 850 per year. And this year we are about 2% EV sales. Thailand last year 3%, give or take. So not that much difference. This year they are probably close to 10%.
Wow.
Because they created this policy that allows people to bring products and then they provide government support, which we are trying to imitate and improve. So we also have optimism that we could if we follow the Thailand trajectory, maybe we can be passing the 5% threshold hopefully by 2024.
2024. So very soon, we are most definitely looking forward to. Things are looking up then from now on. Well, thank you so much again, Mr. Rahmat Kaimuddin, coordinating Deputy Minister for Infrastructure and Transportation at the Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Affairs and Investment. It has been an honor and a joy to speak with you today. Thank you so much, Mr. Rahmat, for coming on TVRI World.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you. And that is it for our special dialogue today. Thank you so much for tuning in on TVRI World. I'm Audrey Toyo, your host, and we shall see you next time. Bye.